It started as a comfort, the way a candle starts as a dot of light and ends up making a whole room feel less haunted. Harry didn't tell anyone that sometimes, when the castle felt too big and the nights felt too loud, he unfolded the Marauder's map just to watch the dots drift around. The ink people had patterns. Filch prowled like a hungry cat along the corridors he trusted. Mrs. Norris looped her territory like she owned it. Peeves zigzagged in impossible angles, the map struggling to keep up with a poltergeist that didn't believe in straight lines. When you'd been chased by a basilisk you never saw, when you'd had dementors breathe against your neck, when you'd watched a friend's rat become a man, it was strangely calming to look at a parchment and know exactly where every threat was. Or think you did. He was in the Gryffindor common room long after the fire had sunk into red coals. The portraits were asleep. The room had that hushed, heavy quiet that only came after midnight, when even the staircase stopped complaining. Ron had gone up hours ago, muttering about early practice. Hermione had tried to force Harry to go too, but she'd been yawning through her words, and eventually she'd surrendered, threatening him with a lecture in the morning. So Harry sat alone, one socked foot dangling over the edge of an armchair, and whispered, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." Ink lines crawled like waking veins. The castle appeared in familiar strokes. Dots, names, people. He scanned the corridors without thinking, the way you scan a room you've lived in long enough to know where the creaky floorboard is. His eyes drifted to the third floor, out of habit, then to the library, then down toward the entrance hall, where late-night trouble often gathered. That was when he saw it. A name, written neat and steady, not flickering, not smudged, as if it had always belonged. Lily Potter. Harry's breath stopped so suddenly, it felt like someone had put a hand over his mouth. He stared until his eyes watered, sure he'd misread. The map's handwriting could be tricky when you were tired, and tiredness made you see things you wanted to see. He blinked hard. Lily Potter. The name wasn't in a corner, like some old label on a room. It was attached to a dot that was moving. It moved along the edge of a corridor on the second floor, just outside a classroom Harry was fairly sure wasn't used at night. It paused. Then, with patient certainty, it turned and continued, as if whoever it belonged to knew exactly where they were going. Harry's fingers tightened on the parchment. He didn't feel cold, but goose flesh rose on his arms anyway. His first thought was that someone had written it there. A prank. Something Fred and George had programmed into the map to make him jump. But the twins hadn't had the map for months now. And besides, the Marauder's map didn't work like that. It didn't let you scribble in names and pretend they were real people. It named people because it knew them. It named everyone, even Peter Pettigrew. Harry's stomach lurched at that memory, and the parchment trembled slightly in his grip, as if it remembered too. The dot labeled Lily Potter stopped again, this time right beside a stairwell. Then it began to move down. Harry's heartbeat stuttered. His mouth had gone dry. He forced himself to swallow. This couldn't be happening. His mother was dead. He'd grown up with that truth, like a scar that never stopped aching. He'd watched her in his memories, heard her in the echo of the Dementors, seen her face in the mirror of Erised until it had nearly broken him. He'd spoken to her only through shadows and reflections. Dead people did not walk the corridors of Hogwarts, unless a terrible, ridiculous thought rose in his mind, half fear, half hope. What if? What if she hadn't died? But he knew better. Everyone knew. There were photographs, graves, names spoken with that quiet reverence reserved for the lost. Unless the map was wrong, was it possible? Could the map be tricked? Harry leaned closer until his nose nearly touched the parchment. The dot was still moving, descending, turning left, moving with the steady confidence of someone with a destination. It wasn't heading toward any of the dormitories. It was heading toward the old, forgotten parts of the castle. The places teachers didn't mention, and students didn't bother with because there was nothing there except dust and locked doors. Harry sat frozen, trying to decide what to do, and the decision made itself when the dot stopped again, and another name appeared near it. Argus Filch. Filch was on the same staircase, coming up. Harry's pulse spiked. If Filch met whoever this was, he'd raise the entire castle with his shouting. Unless Filch could see the dot too. No, that was nonsense. Filch didn't have the map. Filch couldn't see anything except dirt and rule breakers. Harry's fingers moved before his brain caught up. He snapped the map closed, as if hiding it could hide the impossible truth it had shown him. The common room felt suddenly too warm, too small. The silence pressed in. He opened it again, hands shaking. I solemnly swear. The map unfurled. The dot labeled Lily Potter was still there, still moving. Filch was closer now, just a corridor away, advancing like a storm cloud. And then something worse happened. For the first time, the dot didn't just move with certainty. It hesitated. It shifted slightly, as if whoever it belonged to had stopped walking and turned their head. As if they'd sensed that Harry was watching. Harry's throat tightened so hard it hurt. The dot moved again, but not forward. It moved back. It began to retrace its steps, changing direction, cutting across a junction as though taking a shortcut. Away from Filch, yes, but also away from wherever it had been going. It was heading somewhere else now. It was heading toward the Gryffindor Tower. Harry's mind went blank with a sudden, sharp fear that felt almost like being caught doing magic in Privet Drive. Not the fear of punishment, but the fear of the impossible being seen by the Ron eyes. If Ron woke up and saw that name on the map, he'd shout. If Hermione saw it, she'd demand explanations, theories, proof. If anyone else saw it, Harry folded the map again, faster this time, and shoved it inside his robes. His hands were clumsy. His palms were sweating. He stood so quickly the armchair rocked. The embers in the fireplace popped softly, the only sound in the room. He went to the portrait hole, hesitated, then swung his leg over the arm of the chair like a hurdle and bolted for the stairs. Halfway up, he stopped. What was he doing? Chasing a name, chasing a ghost, chasing hope, which was the most dangerous thing in the world because it made you do stupid things. He forced himself to breathe, slow, quiet, the way Lupin had taught him to fight panic. He could go wake Hermione. He should. Hermione would tell him what the map could and couldn't do. Hermione would be sensible. But the thought of saying the name out loud made his chest tighten again, like it would tear something open that he'd kept stitched for years. Lily Potter. He went up another step, then another. And then he made a choice he felt in his bones rather than his mind. He wasn't waking anyone. Not yet. If this was a prank, it was his to face. If this was a mistake, it was his to correct. And if this was something else, something secret and dark and hungry that had learned how to wear his mother's name like a mask, then he needed to know before it reached his dormitory door. Harry climbed to his room, moving as quietly as possible. Ron's bed curtains were drawn. Seamus snored softly. Dean's breathing was slow and even. Harry sat on his bed and pulled the map out again, keeping it low, hidden in the hollow shadow of his blankets. I solemnly swear. The parchment opened. The dot, labeled Lily Potter, had reached the corridor outside the Gryffindor common room. It stopped there, as if waiting, as if listening to the portrait, as if it knew the password. Harry's blood went cold. Then, slowly, like a finger tracing the edge of a wound, the dot moved forward. It slipped through the entrance to Gryffindor Tower, and it began to climb the stairs toward the boys' dormitories. Harry's first instinct was to shove the map under his pillow and pretend he'd never seen it. That was the coward's instinct. The same instinct that had once made him stay very still under the stairs at Privet Drive and hope that if he didn't move, the shouting upstairs would blow past him like a storm. It had never worked then, and it wouldn't work now. The dot was climbing. There were no footsteps in the corridor outside, no scrape of shoes on stone, no whisper of fabric. Hogwarts at night was a museum of old sounds. Wind through cracks, distant groans of shifting walls, the occasional clink from a suit of armor that decided to rearrange itself. But nothing outside Harry's dormitory suggested a living person was moving closer. And yet, the map insisted. Lily Potter. The name sat on the parchment like a drop of ink that refused to dry. Harry slid out of bed so slowly his muscles trembled with the effort of restraint. He didn't know what he was afraid of exactly. Waking Ron, or waking whatever was coming. He pulled on his glasses, then hesitated, then grabbed his wand from beneath his pillow with fingers that felt too big and clumsy. He tucked the map into the waistband of his pajama trousers, like it was the most fragile thing in the world. It rustled softly, and Harry froze until the silence settled again. He padded to the foot of the stairs. The boys' dormitory had a landing that curved into shadow, the stone steps falling down into the warm, dim glow from the common room below. From here, he could see the railing and the top of the tapestry that hung on the wall opposite. He listened. Nothing. Harry swallowed and whispered the map's activation phrase again. Softer this time, like a confession meant only for the parchment. The dot had reached the stairwell outside the dormitory level. It paused. It was close enough now that if the map was telling the truth, Harry and the thing wearing his mother's name were separated by a bend in stone and a few yards of air. He tightened his grip on his wand. He didn't raise it, not yet. Pointing a wand felt like declaring war, and Harry didn't know what he was declaring war on. The dot moved again. It climbed the final steps, and then it stopped. Right at the threshold where the staircase met the dormitory landing, Harry's skin prickled. His mouth went dry again. It was as if the castle itself had gone still, waiting to see what Harry would do. He took one step down, quiet as a cat, and leaned around the curve of stone. The stairwell was empty. Harry blinked, staring hard. The air was clear. No cloak, no ghost, no shimmer of invisibility. Nothing but the torchlight flickering faintly against stone, and the tapestry hanging limp, unmoving. He looked down at the map. Lily Potter was standing exactly where Harry was looking, exactly where the empty air was, a dot in a blank stairwell. Harry's heart thudded so hard he worried Ron would hear it through the curtains. This wasn't a person walking up to him. This was something that could exist on the map and not in the world. Or something that could exist in the world in a way Harry couldn't see. His mind raced for explanations and found only old ones, shaky ones, the kind that made your stomach turn before they made sense. An invisibility cloak, but Harry had the cloak. His was in his trunk, folded in a familiar bundle. And besides, invisibility didn't erase sound entirely. A disillusionment charm, but even a good one left a warping of air if you stared long enough. A ghost, but ghosts didn't show on the Marauder's map. Nearly Headless Nick never appeared, nor did Peeves. The map tracked the living. A polyjuice potion, but the map named people as they were, not as they looked. It had called Peter Pettigrew by his real name even when he was hiding as a rat. So it wasn't a disguise. The map believed it. The map knew it. Harry felt a terrible, creeping certainty. The dot wasn't pretending to be Lily Potter. It was Lily Potter, in whatever strange definition the map used. He lowered the map and raised his eyes again to the empty stairwell. "Who are you?" he whispered. No answer. The torches crackled softly. Harry almost laughed, a thin, shaky sound that died before it was born, asking questions to empty air. This was madness. This was what happened when you'd lived too long on adrenaline and nightmares, and the castle started to feel like it had opinions. But the dot moved again, not forward, sideways. It drifted to the left, away from the center of the stairwell, sliding toward the wall where the tapestry hung. Harry's breath caught. It wasn't walking like a person would. It wasn't following the exact line of the steps. It moved like something that didn't need steps at all, like a thought crossing a mind. It stopped at the tapestry. Harry stared at the tapestry. It was an old one, faded and dusty, depicting a group of medieval witches roasting something that looked suspiciously like a pig, while a wizard pointed dramatically at the sky. Harry had never paid it much attention. It was just part of the scenery. The dot pressed against the tapestry's edge. Then it vanished. Harry's blood turned to ice. Not vanished from the map entirely. The name was still there, but the dot had moved into a place the map marked as solid wall, as if there were a passage there. Harry stepped closer, every instinct screaming at him to wake someone, to run, to do anything except follow. But he couldn't. He couldn't leave it. The name alone was a hook in his ribs. He reached the tapestry and touched the fabric. It was rough under his fingers, dusty. He brushed it aside. Behind it, there was only stone. Harry pressed his palm against the wall. Cold, solid. No seam, no crack, no hint of an opening. He looked back down at the map. Lily Potter was on the other side of the wall, moving steadily now, as if she'd stepped into a hidden corridor. Harry's mind flashed to the castle's secrets. The one-eyed witch statue that led to honeydukes, the moving staircases, the hidden classrooms, the room of requirement itself. Hogwarts had always been a maze pretending to be a school. But this was a passage Harry had never known, and his mother's name was in it. He leaned closer to the stone and listened, heart hammering. For a moment there was nothing but the hush of the castle. Then, so faint Harry thought it might be his imagination, there was a sound. Not footsteps, not breathing, a soft, slow scrape, like something sliding over stone on the other side. Harry flinched back, wand lifting before he could stop it. The scrape stopped. Silence again. He stared at the wall like it might open its eyes. He swallowed and forced his voice to work. "Open," he whispered, feeling stupid. Nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. Hogwarts wasn't a storybook door that opened for the right word. It was a castle full of magic that didn't care about Harry's desperation. He tried again, more carefully scanning the wall with his wand, as if he could sense enchantment the way Hermione claimed she could. "Revelio," he whispered. A faint shimmer ran along the stone, like heat haze, then vanished. Harry's stomach dipped. There was magic here. He tried again. Different words, spells he barely knew, the kind he'd heard older students whisper about locked trunks and secret letters. Alohomora. Nothing. He pressed his ear to the wall, so close the stone chilled his cheek. The scrape came again, a slow movement, and with it, something else, so faint it could have been the wind. Except there was no draft here, a hum. Not a voice, not quite, but a vibration that made his teeth feel oddly sensitive. Harry pulled back, nauseated by the sudden certainty that something was very wrong. He glanced at the map again. Lily Potter was still moving, heading deeper into the castle. Through corridors, the map drew in thinner lines, like they were older, less used, less acknowledged. The dot moved past labels Harry didn't recognize at first glance. His eyes snagged on a name that made his skin prickle. The Mirror Corridor. Harry stared at it. There was no corridor in Hogwarts called that. Not in any lesson. Not on any map of the castle Hermione had ever pored over. Not in any teacher's warning. And yet here it was, written in the same hand as everything else, as if it had always existed, and Harry had simply never earned the right to see it. The dot labeled Lily Potter paused at the entrance to the mirror corridor. Then it moved inside. Harry's breath became ragged. He couldn't let it go alone. He couldn't let whatever this was disappear into a place called the mirror corridor without knowing. But he also couldn't open the passage. Not from here. Not with spells he knew. He stood there, shaking, and for a moment the castle seemed to tilt around him, as if Hogwarts was laughing quietly at the idea that Harry Potter, who had fought a basilisk and a dragon and a dark lord, could be stopped by a wall. Then he remembered something. Not a spell, a pattern. The Marauders had built the map. The Marauders had built in their own logic, their own jokes, their own keys. Harry drew the map close, squinting at the ink near the tapestry's location. The castle was crowded with corridors and rooms, but he found the spot, and there, almost hidden in the clutter, was a tiny scribbled note in the margin, so small it looked like a flourish. For those who don't know where to knock, try asking nicely. Harry's throat tightened. Asking nicely. It sounded like them, like the Marauders, like something Sirius would have written with a grin. Harry leaned forward again, heart pounding, and whispered toward the stone, voice low and strained. Please. For a second, nothing happened. Then the stone under his palm warmed. A hairline seam appeared, so thin it was almost invisible. Running along the edge of a block, Harry would have sworn was solid a moment ago. The seam widened, slowly, like a mouth deciding whether to speak. The wall shifted inward without a sound, and a narrow gap opened, just wide enough for a person to slip through. Cold air breathed out of it, smelling faintly of dust and something sharp, like old metal. Harry stared at the opening. The passage was there. It had been there all along. His heart hammered so hard he felt it in his throat. Every sensible part of him screamed to stop, to go wake Hermione, to get an adult, to do anything except step into a hidden corridor that only opened when he begged. But the map in his hand was warm from his grip, and the name on it was impossible, and the dot was already deep inside. Harry tightened his hand around his wand. He took one last glance toward the dark dormitory behind him, where Ron slept unaware, and then he slipped into the gap. The wall closed silently behind him. Darkness swallowed him. For a heartbeat he stood still, breath caught, feeling the castle's stone wrap around him like a fist. Then, from somewhere ahead, the soft hum returned, stronger now, and with it came the faintest whisper of a sound that made Harry's stomach lurch with recognition, even though he'd never heard it in real life. A laugh. Soft. Woman's. Brief. Gone as soon as it came. Harry raised his wand, forcing his voice to stay steady. Lumos. Light bloomed. The corridor ahead was narrow and old, the stones smoother, darker, as if they had been touched by too many secrets. And lining the walls, set at odd angles, some cracked, some spotless, were mirrors. Hundreds of them, mirrors of every shape and size, their frames ornate or plain, their glass cloudy or clear. The mirror corridor. Harry swallowed hard and looked down at the map. The dot, labeled Lily Potter, was moving again. And now it was moving straight toward him from deeper in the passage, as if it had turned around, as if it had realized Harry had followed, as if it was coming to meet him. The dot on the map moved toward him with the calm certainty of a person who didn't need to hurry. Harry stood in the mouth of the passage, wand raised, Lumos trembling slightly as the light bounced off 100 different pieces of glass. The mirrors didn't reflect him cleanly. Some warped his face into a thin, stretched version. Some reflected only his wand light, and not his body. A few showed him from angles that couldn't exist. as if the corridor itself had more dimensions than it admitted. It smelled like stone that hadn't been warmed by sunlight in a century. Dust, old varnish, a faint metallic tang, like someone had once spilled blood here, and the castle had politely swallowed it. Harry forced his feet to move. Every step made his sopped soles whisper against the floor, and the sound came back at him, strangely scattered. Some mirrors returned the whisper half a beat late. Others returned it early, like an echo that ran ahead. He kept one hand on the map and one on the wand, and tried not to look into the glass too long, because the mirrors were hungry for eyes. He'd learned that once, in a classroom with a boggart and a wardrobe. He'd learned that once, staring into the mirror of Erised, until his ribs ached with wanting. He'd learned that once, under the Dementor's influence, when a voice that wasn't his own had begged and screamed in his head, mirrors took what you brought them. The dot, labeled Lily Potter, stopped. Harry stopped too. According to the parchment, they were separated by a single turn in the corridor, just beyond the edge of what he could see. His throat felt tight, as if the air in this place was thinner, as if the castle had decided he didn't need quite enough oxygen to be brave. He swallowed, and the sound seemed too loud. "Hello," he called, and hated how small his voice sounded among all this glass. No answer. But one of the mirrors on his left, a tall, narrow one with a frame carved like vines, rippled. Not like water, like breath fogging a window from the other side. Harry's wand jerked toward it. The surface cleared, and for a moment it reflected only empty corridor behind him, and the line of mirrors stretching away like a throat. Then words appeared, written from the inside, letters forming slowly, as if pressed by an invisible fingertip. "You shouldn't be here." Harry's heart jolted. The handwriting was not the map's. It was thinner, more delicate. The letters slightly slanted, as if whoever wrote them had once learned on parchment with a careful hand. He stared so hard his eyes burned. "Who are you?" he whispered again, because he couldn't stop himself. The mirror didn't answer immediately. The words faded, as if the glass had exhaled them away. Harry stepped closer, wand light brightening the frame's carved vines. He could see faint scratches on the glass, little scars that looked like someone had once clawed at it. "Lily," he said, and the name tasted like a forbidden spell. The mirror rippled again, stronger. A second line of writing appeared. "Don't say that here." Harry's stomach dropped. That was not a prank, not a random ghost scribbling warnings for fun. That was fear, and it was fear of the name itself, spoken aloud in the mirror corridor. Harry turned his head slightly, scanning the corridor ahead. The turn was still there, dark beyond his wandlight. Mirrors lined the bend, too, catching and breaking his lumos into fractured shards. He looked back down at the map. The dot was still just around the corner, not moving now, waiting, or listening. Harry took a slow step forward. The vine-framed mirror flashed, and for an instant, it didn't show the corridor behind him. It showed a different hallway entirely. Lower ceiling, stone darker, torches that burned with a bluish flame. Harry's breath hitched. Then it snapped back to normal, as if it had shown him something by accident. He backed away from it and kept walking, turning his attention to the map, to the dot, to the simple fact that the parchment insisted this was real. As he approached the bend, the hum in the air grew stronger. It vibrated in his wand hand. It made his teeth feel as if they were gently buzzing. Harry rounded the corner. The corridor widened slightly here, opening into a small chamber shaped like a half-circle. More mirrors. Always more mirrors. But these were arranged differently, not lining the walls, but standing on their own, like sentries, tall ones, a few so old their frames were blackened, as if they'd survived a fire. And in the center of the chamber, facing away from him, was a figure, not a dot, not a ripple, not a trick of glass. A person. Harry's legs went cold. The person wore a simple robe, dark and plain. Their hair hung loose down their back, a shade that in the dim light looked like chestnut, or maybe auburn, or maybe just brown with the mirrors making lies out of color. They were standing still, hands clasped in front of them, as if they were waiting for someone to finish gathering courage. Harry's voice failed. The map in his hand felt suddenly heavy, like it was made of stone. He swallowed and forced air into his lungs. "Lily," he said, softer than before, almost a breath rather than a word. The figure didn't turn. Instead, the mirrors around them flickered, like 100 eyelids blinking at once. The hum rose a notch. Then the figure spoke, voice low. "Don't." The word cut through the chamber, and Harry froze. It wasn't his mother's voice. He'd heard her voice in memories, in the echo the Dementors pulled out of him, in the way it sounded like light breaking. This voice was different, older in some ways, flatter in others, as if it had been worn down by repetition. But it was still a woman's voice. Harry's throat burned. "Who are you?" he managed. The figure tilted their head slightly, as if considering whether the question deserved an answer. "You already decided," the voice said, still facing away. "You followed the name." Harry's grip tightened on his wand. He took a small step forward, keeping distance, keeping the chamber between them like a safety line. "The map says," he began, but his voice cracked. The figure's shoulders rose and fell in what might have been a sigh. "The map says many things," she replied. "Sometimes it says what you want to hear. Sometimes it says what this place wants you to hear." Harry stared at her back, trying to make sense of her shape, her posture, the way she held herself. Something in the slope of her shoulders felt familiar, in the way strangers can feel familiar when your brain tries to force them into a memory. "Turn around," Harry said, surprising himself with how sharp it sounded. The mirrors trembled, and for an instant, every surface in the chamber reflected Harry at once. Harry with wide eyes, Harry with wand raised, Harry with his mouth open, Harry with fear in his face like a bruise. 100 versions of him, all equally powerless. The figure didn't turn. "You don't want that," she said. "I do," Harry lied. There was a pause long enough that Harry's heartbeat filled it like drums. Then the figure slowly lifted one hand and pointed toward a mirror on the far right of the chamber. It was different from the others. It was tall and plain, with a frame of dark wood that looked almost black. The glass was unusually clear, not cloudy, not cracked. It reflected the chamber with uncomfortable honesty. Harry felt his stomach twist before he even looked at it properly. He recognized the shape, not with certainty, but with the deep, sick recognition you feel when you see something you've dreamed about for years. The mirror of Erized, except it wasn't. It couldn't be. The mirror of Erized had been hidden away, moved, protected. Dumbledore had said it would never be found again. But the shape was the same. The frame, the way the glass seemed to hold more depth than it should. Harry's breath came shallow. "That's not," he started. "It's not," the woman agreed, still not turning. "It's a cousin, a sibling, a mistake." Harry forced his gaze away from it and back to her. "Why are you here?" he asked, and hated how desperate the words sounded. The woman's hand lowered. "Because you came," she said simply. "That's not an answer." The mirrors flickered again. The hum deepened. Harry felt suddenly like the chamber was tightening around him, like the air had thickened. The woman finally shifted, as if deciding it was time. She turned slowly. Harry's wand light caught her face, and the world tipped. She didn't look like a ghost. She wasn't pale and translucent. She looked alive. Skin, eyes, a real mouth, real hair that fell in messy waves around her cheeks. Her eyes were green, not Green like Harry's, the way people said it as a comfort. Green like a knife edge. Green like the memory that had kept him alive and furious all at once. Her nose was the wrong shape for Lily's, slightly sharper. Her jaw was a touch narrower. There were faint lines at the corners of her mouth that suggested she'd smiled and not smiled for years. But the resemblance hit Harry like a curse. His wand lowered a fraction without permission. "No," he whispered. The woman looked at him steadily. Her expression was not warmth, not maternal softness. It was something guarded and tired and dangerous, like a cat that had been cornered too many times. "You shouldn't be here," she repeated, and now the words sounded less like a warning and more like an order. Harry's voice came out raw. "You're—" He couldn't finish. He couldn't say, "my mum," because it felt like blasphemy. He couldn't say Lily because the vine-framed mirror had warned him not to. The woman's mouth tightened. "I'm not your mother," she said. Harry's heart cracked in two directions. Relief so sharp it made him dizzy, and disappointment so deep he almost dropped the map. But the map reads, "The truth it can reach," the woman said. "And names are doors." Harry stared at her, trying to line up her face with the Lily in photographs. The Lily in his mind. There were too many differences for it to be her. And yet, the eyes. The eyes were a cruel joke. His voice shook. "Who are you, then?" For the first time, the woman's gaze flickered, not away, but inward, as if she was looking at something behind her own eyes. "Someone who shouldn't exist," she said. The mirrors around them began to shimmer more noticeably. Harry realized, with a sudden chill, that they weren't reflecting the chamber consistently anymore. Some showed Harry alone. Some showed Harry facing an empty space. Some showed Harry facing a different woman entirely. Younger, older, smiling, crying, blood on her hands, hair pinned up, hair burned short. The chamber was trying out versions of her, like a person flipping through masks. Harry stepped back instinctively. His heel bumped a mirror stand behind him, and it swayed slightly, the glass catching his reflection and bending it into a thin, frightened thing. "Stop," he said, though he wasn't sure who he was telling. The woman didn't move, but her jaw clenched as if she was holding something back. "You brought attention," she said quietly. "It can feel you." Harry's breath hitched. "What can?" The woman's eyes flicked past him to the corridor he'd come from. "The corridor," she said, and then corrected herself. "The mirrors, the house underneath the house, the part of Hogwarts that remembers too much." Harry's skin crawled. He'd always thought of Hogwarts as alive in a friendly way. Moving staircases like jokes, portraits with personalities, house elves humming in the kitchens. But this place felt alive like a wound was alive. Tender, reactive, angry if you pressed too hard. Harry clutched the map tighter. "Why does the map call you Lily Potter?" The woman's mouth twitched. "Not quite a smile, because someone once tried to make me into her," she said. Harry's mind snagged on the word, tried. "Who?" he demanded, and his voice rose, echoing off glass. The mirrors pulsed. The hum sharpened into something that felt like pressure behind Harry's eyes. The woman's gaze snapped back to him, hard. "Quiet," she hissed. Harry swallowed, anger and fear tangling together. "Tell me," he whispered, but there was steel under it now. "Who made you?" The woman stared at him for a long moment, like she was weighing whether truth would help or kill him. Then she spoke, low and careful. "Your headmaster?" she said. Harry's stomach dropped through the floor. "No," he said automatically, because his brain couldn't accept it. Dumbledore was complicated, secretive, maddening, but not this. Not something like this The woman's eyes didn't soften. "I don't mean he wanted it," she said. "Not at first. But he opened a door, and this place walked through it." Harry shook his head, breathing fast. "You're lying." The mirrors flared, and suddenly Harry wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at himself, reflected in the nearest mirror, except the reflection wasn't current. It was Harry at 11, standing in front of the mirror of Erised, eyes wide and shining, seeing his parents behind him, Lily's hands on his shoulders, James laughing, warmth, safety. Harry's breath caught. Then the reflection changed. Now it was Dumbledore standing behind 11-year-old Harry, watching the mirror with a face like stone, watching Harry watch, watching the mirror give and take. The image wasn't like a memory. It felt like the mirror was showing him a truth it had held. Harry's wand shook. The woman's voice came from somewhere behind the reflection. Steady. "He brought you to a mirror that feeds on longing," she said. "He thought he could control it. He thought he could use it to keep you safe, to understand what the Dark Lord had done, to measure what you might become. But mirrors don't only show, they take." The reflection shifted again. Now the mirror of Erised was not in the classroom, Harry remembered. It was somewhere else. A narrow chamber with stone walls and older magic in the air. A place like this. A place like the mirror corridor. A younger Dumbledore stood before it, alone, his shoulders drawn tight. His eyes were red-rimmed, as if he hadn't slept. He stared at the mirror like it had teeth. Harry felt sick. "That's," he began, but his voice wouldn't work properly. The woman's hand lifted slightly, palm outward, as if steadying the air. "You feel it," she said. "That's why you shouldn't be here. The corridor shows you what it wants. It makes you believe. It makes you chase." Harry forced himself to look away from the mirror, back to the woman. "You're saying you came out of it?" he asked. The woman's expression tightened. "No," she said. "Not exactly." The hum in the chamber deepened again. Harry realized it had a rhythm now, slow and steady, like breathing. He glanced at the mirrors and saw that some of them were no longer reflecting the chamber at all. They were reflecting darkness, a darker darkness than ordinary shadow, thick and liquid. It looked like the glass had turned into windows that opened onto a place without light. Harry's throat tightened. The woman followed his gaze. Her shoulders stiffened. "It noticed you," she murmured. Harry's wand came up again. "What is it?" "A hunger," she said. "A leftover. A consequence. Hogwarts has wounds. Old magic leaves scars. This is a scar that learned how to feed." One of the mirrors to Harry's left, small, oval, with a silver frame, fogged from the inside. Letters appeared, fast, scratched in a frantic hand. Harry Potter. Harry's blood went cold. It knew his name. The letters blurred, then new ones formed beneath. "Show me." Harry took an involuntary step back. The woman's eyes snapped to that mirror, sharp as a blade. "Don't," she said to Harry, voice urgent now. "Whatever it offers, whatever it shows, don't look. Not properly, not with wanting." Harry's breathing turned shallow. "It's a mirror. How do I not look?" "With your mind," she said. "You can stare into glass and still refuse it. You can look without giving." Harry's fingers tightened around his wand so hard his knuckles ached. The oval mirror trembled. The letters changed again. Lily. Harry's stomach lurched. The name appeared like bait. The woman's face hardened with fury. "Stop using that," she snapped at the mirror, and her voice made the chamber shudder. For a moment, the hum faltered. The letters smeared as if wiped by an invisible hand. Harry stared at her. "You can talk to it?" he whispered. The woman's expression flickered. Something like pain crossed it, gone too fast to grasp. It listens, she said. Not because it respects me, because I'm part of its story. Harry's mind raced, trying to put pieces together that didn't want to fit. If you're not my mum, he said slowly, and you're not a ghost, then what are you? The woman looked at him, and for the first time there was something almost gentle in her eyes. Not warmth, but understanding of a specific kind of loneliness. I'm a draft, she said. An outline, a possibility that was pulled too hard. Harry didn't understand, not fully, but the words made his skin prickle. A possibility of what? The mirrors around them brightened slightly, as if eager for the answer. The woman's jaw clenched again. Of her surviving, she said softly. Of her coming back. Of the world being kinder than it was. Harry's chest tightened so hard it hurt. The truth was a blade. He wanted that. He wanted it so much it made his vision blur. The corridor knew it. The mirrors smelled it like blood in water. The oval mirror's surface cleared suddenly, and Harry saw an image. Not of the chamber, of a room with a crib, of sunlight through curtains, of a woman standing over a baby, hair bright auburn in the light, eyes green and shining with exhausted love. Lily, real Lily. Harry's breath hitched, a half-sob caught in his throat. The woman beside him moved fast. Her hand snapped up and flicked her fingers toward the mirror, like casting a spell without a wand. The image shattered into darkness. Harry stumbled, dizzy with loss and fury. "Why did you—" he began, voice breaking. The woman's eyes blazed. "Because that's how it eats you," she hissed. "It shows you the exact shape of your hunger. And when you lean in, it takes a piece. You think it's giving, but it's biting." Harry's mouth went dry. He pressed his free hand against his chest, as if he could feel something being stolen. The hum grew louder, irritated now, as if the corridor didn't like being denied. Several mirrors fogged at once. More writing appeared, overlapping, frantic, like many hands scratching. "Come closer. Look. We can fix it. We can bring her back. Harry, 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 Harry." Harry's head spun. The woman stepped in front of him slightly, positioning herself between Harry and the worst of the mirrors like a shield. It was a strange, fierce gesture, protective in a way that made Harry's throat ache. "You need to leave," she said tightly. "No," Harry breathed. Not because he was brave, but because he couldn't accept walking away now. "You said you're part of its story. You said Dumbledore." "You heard enough," she snapped, then softened a fraction. "You heard too much, really." Harry's hands shook. "I have to know," he said. "Why does it call you Lily Potter?" The woman hesitated. The hum pressed in. The mirrors trembled like eager mouths. Then she spoke, low and bitter. Because the first time it tasted his longing, she said it wore her face. Harry's stomach dropped. "His longing," Harry whispered. The woman's eyes flicked toward the black-framed mirror at the far right again, the one that looked like a cousin of Erist. "Dumbledore," she said. "He came here before you ever arrived at Hogwarts. He came here when he was desperate enough to make foolish deals with old magic. He stood in front of that mirror, and he wanted something the world wouldn't give him." Harry's throat tightened around the question he couldn't stop. What did he want? The woman's expression twisted, not with mockery, but with a tired sadness. "To undo a death," she said. Not hers. His own. Harry's mind flickered to names he barely understood. Ariana Grindelwald. Things whispered in biographies. Things hinted in Dumbledore's brief silences. Before Harry could speak, the hum surged. The black-framed mirror at the far right. Cousin, sibling, mistake. Darkened, and then cleared, and showed a scene so vivid Harry's knees went weak. A young Dumbledore stood in a bright room filled with sunlight, his hair not yet fully white, his face less carved by grief. Opposite him was a boy with dark hair and laughing eyes, reaching out a hand. Not Harry, someone else. The boy smiled like he trusted the world. Harry felt something cold in his stomach, realizing the mirror was showing Dumbledore what he wanted, and the corridor was showing Harry what would hook him into understanding. The woman's voice came again, tight. "Don't," she warned. Harry tried to look away, but the image pulled at him like gravity. The boy in the mirror turned his head, as if sensing Harry's gaze, and for a heartbeat his eyes met Harry's through the glass. Harry's breath stopped. The boy's eyes weren't laughing anymore. They were empty, like a portrait's eyes when the subject had been dead too long. The boy's mouth opened, and a voice came out of the mirror, not the boy's voice, not Dumbledore's, but something layered beneath, something that sounded like many voices trying to speak as one. "You can have him too," it whispered. Harry flinched back so hard he nearly fell. The image rippled. Now the mirror showed Harry's own parents again, standing together, smiling at him with aching clarity. Lily reached out her hand, fingers spread, like she could pull him through. Harry's whole body surged toward it before he could think. A hand grabbed his wrist. The woman, the not Lily, yanked him back with surprising strength. Harry stumbled, breath ragged, wand light flaring wildly. "I said don't," she hissed, voice shaking now with genuine fear. Harry stared at her, chest heaving, ashamed of how quickly he'd almost given in. The mirrors hummed louder, angry, as if offended by refusal. The vine-framed mirror near the entrance rippled again, and this time it didn't write words. It showed a glimpse of the corridor outside, the one Harry had walked through. But there was someone else in it now, a dot of movement reflected in the glass. A tall figure in a dressing gown, silver beard, catching the torchlight, walking with calm purpose, not hurried, but certain. Dumbledore. Harry's heart dropped. The woman saw it too, her face drained of color. "He's coming," she whispered. Harry's mind panicked. How does he know? The woman's eyes flicked to the mirrors, to the chamber, to the map half crumpled in Harry's hand. "Because the corridor tells," she said. "It likes attention. It likes witnesses. It likes when secrets become stories." Harry's throat tightened. "We have to." "We," the woman echoed, and there was something sharp in it. Harry looked at her, desperate. "Come with me," he said, the words spilling out before he could weigh them. "If you're trapped here, if this place is dangerous, come with me. We'll tell." The woman's laugh was short and humorless. "Tell who?" she demanded, eyes flashing. "The headmaster who built a life out of locking doors and calling it protection? The teachers who think Hogwarts is safe because they need to believe it? Your friends, who will look at me and see what they want, and not what I am?" Harry flinched, because she was right in a way that hurt. Dumbledore's reflection in the vine-framed mirror was closer now, moving with the steady pace of someone who knows exactly where he's going. Harry's breathing turned ragged again. "Then what do we do?" he whispered. The woman's gaze snapped to the wall behind him, the direction of the entrance. "You leave," she said. "And you?" Harry insisted. The woman's jaw clenched. "I stay," she said. "I close the door behind you. I let him find me, not you." Harry shook his head violently. "No." The mirrors flared again, and the chamber seemed to tilt. For a moment, Harry saw himself reflected in a dozen mirrors at once, each reflection slightly different, one with tears, one with anger, one with his mouth open in a scream, one with his eyes blank like someone already taken. The hum sharpened into a pressure that made him feel nauseated. The corridor was getting impatient. The woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Listen to me," she said, and the intensity in her eyes made Harry still despite himself. "This place doesn't just show what you want. It learns you. It learns the soft places, the places you don't talk about. It will offer you your mother until you believe you can touch her, and then it will take something you can't get back." Harry swallowed, eyes stinging. "I just want to see her," he whispered, and hated himself for saying it. The woman's expression softened just slightly, as if the confession had sliced something open in her, too. "I know," she said quietly. "That's why you have to go." The vine-framed mirror rippled. Dumbledore's reflected figure had reached the turn in the corridor. Any moment now, he would be here, stepping into the chamber full of mirrors and lies. Harry's mind raced. He couldn't go back the way he came if Dumbledore was coming from that direction. He clutched the map. Is there another exit? The woman's eyes flicked to the black-framed mirror at the far right. The cousin of Erised. Harry's stomach tightened. "That's not an exit. That's... It can be," she said, voice tight. "But it costs." Harry stared at her, horror rising. "I'm not that," she snapped, then steadied herself. "Not the way you think. It's a door if you know what to give it. Not blood, not life. Attention, certainty, a choice." Harry didn't understand, but there was no time to demand clarity. Dumbledore's silhouette appeared in one of the side mirrors now, his face calm but eyes sharp, scanning. Harry's heart pounded. The woman grabbed Harry's forearm again, pulling him toward the black-framed mirror. He resisted instinctively. "I'm not going through that," he hissed. "You're not going through it," she snapped back. "You're going around it." She pointed to the base of the mirror's frame. Harry's wand-light caught a small gap between the mirror and the floor, a thin shadow that didn't match the rest of the stone, a hidden space, a crawl space. Harry's stomach turned at the thought of squeezing under a mirror that fed on longing. But Dumbledore's reflected form was almost at the chamber's threshold. There was no other option. The woman dropped to her knees, pressed her palm against the mirror's frame, and whispered something Harry couldn't hear over the hum. The black-framed mirror darkened, then cleared, not showing an image, but becoming flat and dull, like ordinary glass. The hum eased slightly, as if the corridor had been distracted. "Now," she said urgently. "Go." Harry knelt, heart hammering, and shoved the map deeper into his waistband so he could use both hands. He lay flat on the cold stone and wriggled forward, pushing himself into the gap beneath the mirror. It was tight. Dust filled his nose. The stone scraped his elbows. For a terrifying moment, he felt the weight of the mirror above him like a threat, like it might tip and pin him. He forced himself onward. Behind him, in the chamber, Dumbledore's voice echoed, calm and sharp. "Harry." Harry froze so hard his lungs locked. The woman's voice answered smooth as glass. "No." A pause. Harry could barely breathe. Then Dumbledore again, closer now. "You shouldn't be here." The woman gave a quiet, almost amused exhale. "Funny," she said. "I was going to tell you the same thing." Harry crawled forward, heart smashing against his ribs, into darkness that smelled like damp stone and old secrets. The crawl space sloped downward slightly, as if the castle's bones were leading him away from the chamber. He moved blind, feeling with his hands, trying not to think about the voices behind him, trying not to think about what the corridor would do to her. He finally reached a point where the space widened enough for him to push himself upright into a crouch. He raised his wand, whispering, "Lumos." Again, the light revealed a narrow tunnel, not lined with mirrors, but with stone and old iron pipes that hummed faintly, carrying warmth and something else. Magic, maybe, pulsing like a heartbeat. Harry looked down at the map with shaking fingers. The dot labeled Lily Potter was still in the chamber. Dumbledore's dot was there too, right beside it. They weren't moving. They were facing each other. Harry's throat tightened until it hurt. Then, slowly, another name appeared on the map in the chamber, a dot that hadn't been there before. Not a student, not a teacher, not a ghost, just a name written in ink that looked darker than the rest. The corridor. Harry's blood went ice cold. The dot wasn't a person. It was the place itself, finally deciding to put itself on the map, and it was moving. It moved toward the dot labeled Lily Potter. Harry's stomach lurched. He started crawling again, faster, panic overriding caution, pushing through the tunnel as if speed could change what was happening behind him. The tunnel bent, then opened into a small stone hatch, set into the floor of another corridor. Harry shoved at it, and it shifted with a soft groan. He pushed it open and pulled himself up into the castle. He emerged into a dark hallway he didn't recognize, colder than the main corridors, with older stone and fewer torches. A portrait hung crookedly nearby, its subject asleep. Harry closed the hatch as quietly as he could and pressed his back to the wall, breathing hard. He pulled the map out again, hands shaking so much the parchment fluttered. In the chamber, Dumbledore's dot was still there. The dot labeled Lily Potter was still there. The dot labeled the corridor had reached her. For a moment, all three dots overlapped. Then the dot labeled Lily Potter flickered. It didn't vanish. It stuttered, like a candle in wind. Harry's chest tightened. Then the dot moved, suddenly, sharply, away from the chamber, toward the black-framed mirror, toward the base, toward the crawl space, toward Harry. Harry's breath caught. It was coming after him. And Dumbledore's dot followed. Harry ran. Not the reckless sprint he used in Quidditch corridors, not the loud, stomping panic that woke portraits and earned detentions. This was the quiet kind of running, the kind you learn when you've had to move through a sleeping house without waking the people who might hurt you for existing. His socks slid on cold stone. He caught himself on the wall once, shoulder scraping, and kept going, wand light bobbing ahead like a nervous star. The corridor he'd emerged into felt wrong, not dangerous in the obvious Hogwarts way, where suits of armor might trip you or a stair might swing. Wrong, like a memory that didn't belong to you. The stone was darker, the air colder, and the torches were fewer, their flames small and tight, as if they were conserving themselves. He glanced down at the map while moving, forcing his eyes to focus through the blur of motion. His dot was a frantic smudge. Dumbledore's dot moved with slow certainty like a tide, and the dot labeled Lily Potter was close behind Dumbledore, too close, as if she had been pulled rather than walked. Worst of all, the dot labeled the corridor followed them both, not like a person, but like an ink stain sliding across parchment. Harry's stomach clenched. He shoved the map away and focused on the real corridor, searching for any sign, any door, any familiar landmark. The castle was full of staircases that led to half-forgotten landings. If he could just get to a place with people, with light, with noise, if he could reach the common room or the hospital wing, or even the kitchens, then the secret part of the castle might lose its grip. Secrets hated witnesses. That was how secrets survived. But every turn he took seemed to lead deeper into older stone. He passed a suit of armor that looked like it had been bolted to the wall centuries ago, its visor down, its hands folded as if in prayer. The armor didn't move. It didn't even creak. It simply existed, silent and watchful. Harry's breathing rasped in his throat. He slowed just enough to listen. Behind him, there were still no footsteps, no chase sounds, no voices, which somehow made it worse. because if Dumbledore was following, the man had either stopped to do something terrifying, or he was moving without needing to hurry. Confident Harry couldn't escape, Harry rounded a corner and nearly slammed into a tapestry that hung like a curtain across the hallway. He caught it with his free hand, yanked it aside, and froze. The corridor opened into a small landing, with a single spiral staircase leading down. At the center of the landing was a thin iron railing that looked too delicate to be safe, and on the wall opposite the stairs was a door, not a normal wooden Hogwarts door. This one was stone, carved directly into the wall, with no handle. Its surface was carved with tiny mirrored squares, like a mosaic. Each square reflected wand-light faintly. Harry's heart punched. He could feel it. The same hum, faint but present. This was another door into that place. He stumbled backward. Then, without thinking, he pressed his palm to the stone mosaic, as if his body remembered what the other wall had wanted. "Please," he breathed. Nothing happened. Harry tried again, voice shaking. "Please." The mirrored squares brightened slightly, reflecting his face in 1,000 tiny fragments. Each fragment showed a slightly different expression: fear, anger, pleading, disgust. The door didn't open. The hum grew stronger. Harry spun, wand raised, and looked back the way he'd come. The corridor behind him was empty, but the air was different now. The torchlight seemed to bend strangely, as if the space itself was watching. Harry felt the hairs on his arms rise. He looked down at his hand and realized his palm had started to sweat. The sweat evaporated quickly, as if the air was thirsty. He pulled out the map with shaking fingers. Dumbledore was close, 2 corridors away. Lily Potter was with him. The corridor was with them. Harry's mouth went dry. He couldn't go down the spiral stairs. The staircase felt like a trap, a funnel. He couldn't open the mosaic door. He couldn't go back the way he came. For the first time in years, Harry felt like a trapped animal. He looked at the tapestry he'd shoved aside. It hung limply, hiding nothing. Then his eyes snagged on the railing. Beyond it, a narrow ledge ran along the wall, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze along. It looked like a maintenance ledge, meant for someone to reach a torch bracket or patch stonework. It wasn't a passage, not really, but it was an option. Harry lowered himself over the railing, gripping it with both hands, and eased his feet down onto the ledge. Stone bit through his socks immediately, cold and rough. He pressed his back to the wall and began to shuffle sideways along the ledge, inch by inch, trying not to look down. The drop was not enormous, maybe 1 floor to a lower landing, but it was enough to break bones if he slipped. Halfway along, the ledge turned slightly, forcing Harry to pivot. He held his breath, braced with his fingertips, and managed to edge around. Then, from the corridor above, a voice drifted down, not a shout, not angry, just calm, steady, like someone speaking in a classroom. "Harry." Harry's muscles locked. He clung to the ledge and turned his head upward. Dumbledore stood at the top of the spiral stairs. He hadn't emerged from the corridor Harry had come through. He was simply there, as if he'd known a quicker path. His dressing gown hung straight, his beard neat, his half-moon glasses reflecting torchlight. His face was unreadable in the dimness, except for his eyes. His eyes were sharp. Behind him, on the landing, was no one, no woman, no second figure. Harry's breath came too fast. He couldn't see her, but he knew she was nearby. He could feel the hum in the stone, thick now. He tightened his grip on the ledge until his fingers ached. "You shouldn't be here," Dumbledore said gently, and it made Harry want to scream. It was the same tone Dumbledore used when explaining rules, when offering tea, when wrapping danger in softness. Harry's throat burned. "Where is she?" he demanded. Dumbledore's expression didn't change. Safe, he said, and the word landed like a lie, because Dumbledore never said safe unless he wanted you to stop asking questions. Harry's voice cracked. The map? I know what you saw, Dumbledore interrupted, still quiet, still patient. And I am sorry. That sent a flash of rage through Harry so hot it almost steadied him. Sorry? He spat. His wand hand trembled. You're sorry? Dumbledore's gaze flicked briefly to the wand, then back to Harry's face. He didn't look afraid of it. That was part of what made Dumbledore terrifying. He didn't fear other people's weapons. I am sorry, he repeated, that you were ever given a reason to chase your dead. Harry's chest tightened like a fist. He felt suddenly dizzy, balanced on a ledge, holding on to stone, hearing his own grief spoken aloud by the man who had watched him grow up inside it. Don't, Harry breathed. Don't talk about her like that. Dumbledore's eyes softened slightly, but his voice remained steady. Harry, he said, come down from there. Harry's laugh was short and bitter. So, you can take the map and tell me to go back to bed? Dumbledore didn't answer immediately. The hum deepened. Harry felt it through his bones. Then Dumbledore said, very quietly, so I can close the door you have opened. Harry's stomach dropped. So it is real, Harry said hoarsely. It's not a prank. It's not the map being wrong. Dumbledore's gaze held his. It is real. And you knew, Harry said, the words shaking out of him, unstoppable now. You knew there was a place under the castle, full of mirrors. You knew it could do this. You knew it could put her name on the map. Dumbledore didn't deny it. He looked for the first time tired. Yes, he said simply. Harry felt something inside him split. Not like grief, but like trust being cracked open. He'd known Dumbledore kept secrets. He'd lived inside those secrets. But knowing there were secrets about his mother's name, about doors that opened when you begged, about things that wrote Harry Potter in fog on glass, it made the castle feel suddenly less like home. Harry's voice went raw. What is it? Dumbledore's gaze drifted past Harry, down the ledge, to the darkness below, as if he could see through stone. It is old magic, he said. Older than the school, older than the founders. It collects reflections, possibilities, the shapes of choices that were never made. Harry's stomach turned. Like the mirror of Erist. Dumbledore's mouth tightened slightly. A flicker of something passed across his face. Regret, or anger at himself. The mirror of Erist was brought to Hogwarts, he said. This was already here. Harry's breathing shook. And you used it. Dumbledore's eyes returned to him. I did. The honesty landed like a blow, because it didn't come with justification. Not yet. Harry's fingers slipped slightly on the ledge. He tightened them again, forcing his body to stay steady even as his mind shook. Why? He whispered, and hated how small it sounded. Dumbledore's voice turned, softer. Because I was foolish. Harry stared at him, disbelief and fury tangled. You expect me to believe that? Harry snapped. You, the most powerful wizard. Power does not immunize us against grief, Dumbledore said quietly. The hum in the stone pulsed. Harry felt the corridor listening. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened again, as if he remembered where they were. The woman you met, he said, is not Lily Potter. I know, Harry said through clenched teeth. She told me. Dumbledore's eyes flicked, as if a brief flash of approval or concern. Good. Harry's anger flared. Don't act like you're proud of me for not being stupid. Dumbledore didn't react. He simply continued, voice careful now. She is a reflection given shape, he said, a possibility drawn out of longing and trapped by attention. She is a draft of a kinder world. Harry's throat tightened. So she's a lie. Dumbledore shook his head slightly. A lie is intentionally false, he said. This is a wound. Harry's stomach twisted. And you let it wear my mother's name. Dumbledore's jaw tightened. I did not name her. Harry's eyes stung. But you didn't stop it. Silence. Then Dumbledore said, very softly, no. Harry stared at him, breath shaking. The hum grew stronger again, pushing in like pressure. The air on the ledge felt colder, as if the corridor wanted Harry to slip. Somewhere below, a mirror square glinted, catching wand light in a way that looked like an eye-opening. Harry forced himself to speak, to keep control through words, because words were all he had left. What does it want? He asked. Dumbledore's eyes flicked down again. It wants to be fed. Harry's stomach dropped. Fed with what? Dumbledore's gaze returned to Harry's face, and there was no softness in it now. There was only warning, with attention. He said, with longing. With stories, it takes the shape of what you want. And when you lean in, it takes a piece of you. Harry's chest tightened. She told me that. Dumbledore nodded once. A sharp movement. Then listen to her, he said. Harry's mind lurched. You're telling me to listen to the thing you helped create, Harry demanded. Dumbledore's voice remained steady. I am telling you to survive. Harry's grip on the ledge ached. His arms trembled. Where is she? He asked again, voice shaking. Dumbledore's eyes moved, just slightly, toward the mosaic door behind him. The door's mirrored squares had begun to faintly fog, one by one, as if something on the other side was breathing. Harry's stomach lurched. She is behind that door, Dumbledore said. Harry's heart pounded. And you're going to lock her in there? Dumbledore's gaze held his, and for a moment Harry saw something like pain. Yes, Dumbledore said. Harry's throat burned. She helped me. Dumbledore's voice softened, almost to a whisper. I know. He remembered her grabbing his wrist, pulling him back from the mirror. He remembered her standing between him and the glass that wrote his name like a lure. He remembered the way she looked at him when he admitted he wanted to see his mother. Like she understood that kind of wanting too well. She's not evil, Harry said, voice cracking. Dumbledore's eyes flickered. No, he agreed, she is not. Then why? Because she cannot leave, Dumbledore said, and now his voice was sharper. Because if she leaves, the corridor follows, because she is tethered to it. And it is tethered to the part of you that will always reach for what you lost. Harry's hands shook. The mosaic door fogged more heavily now, breath from the inside, and words began to form across its tiny mirrored squares, faint but readable. Harry's blood went cold. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed. Do not answer it. Harry's breathing turned shallow. The door's writing changed. Come closer. Harry's body tensed, reflexively, like a fish feeling a hook tug. Dumbledore stepped forward slightly, placing himself between the door and the stairwell, as if his body could block the castle's hunger. Harry, he said quietly, I am going to ask you again. Come down from that ledge. Harry stared at him, rage and fear twisting together. So you can pretend none of this happened, Harry said. So you can send me back to bed and keep this secret like you keep everything. Dumbledore's gaze hardened. So you do not die of wanting, he said. The words hit Harry like a slap, because they were too true, too sharp. Harry's breath shook. You don't get to say that to me. Dumbledore's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You have been hunted by a Dark Lord, he said, and you have survived because your instincts are sharp. Do not let grief be the blade that slips between your ribs. Harry's eyes burned. The door's mirrors shivered. The writing smeared and reformed. Faster now, frantic. We can fix it. We can bring her back. Just look. Just look. Harry's chest tightened. He felt the pull again, a gravity toward the promise. His wand hand lifted slightly without his permission. Dumbledore's voice snapped, sharp as a spell. Harry flinched. The door's mirrored squares darkened suddenly, and for a heartbeat, the surface wasn't fogged at all. It was clear, and it reflected something it shouldn't have. Harry saw himself standing not on the ledge, but on solid ground, older, taller, face harder. Behind him, in the reflection, stood Lily Potter, alive, smiling, hand on his shoulder. Harry's breath broke. The image was so perfect, it hurt. It pressed against him like warmth against frozen skin. It was everything he'd ever wanted, and it was right there. A step away, a glance away, a surrender away. He leaned forward before he could stop himself. The ledge shifted under his foot. His heel slipped. His stomach dropped, weightless, and the world tilted violently. Harry grabbed at the wall with his free hand, nails scraping stone. His wand light flared wildly. For a split second he saw himself falling in a dozen mirrors, each reflection showing a different way he could break. A hand shot out from above and caught his wrist. Dumbledore's grip was iron. Harry dangled over the drop, heart screaming, and Dumbledore pulled with surprising strength, hauling him up inch by inch until Harry's knees hit the ledge again and he could press his body back to the wall. Harry sucked in air like he'd been drowning. Dumbledore didn't let go of his wrist immediately. His voice was low, fierce. "Do you feel it?" he demanded. Harry's throat burned. "Yes," he rasped. Dumbledore released him and stepped back, breathing controlled, eyes sharp. "It is not your mother," Dumbledore said. "It is not even kindness. It is appetite." Harry's vision blurred with rage and humiliation and grief. "I almost—" he began, but couldn't finish. Dumbledore's face tightened. "I know." The mosaic door's surface rippled again, as if irritated at being denied, and then a new reflection appeared, not on the door, but on the air behind Dumbledore, a shimmer like heat haze, a figure resolving. The woman, she stepped out of the shadow beside the mosaic door, as if she'd been there the whole time, pressed into the corner of reality. Her hair was mussed now, her face paler, her eyes bright with something like anger. She looked at Harry first, and there was a flash of relief so quick it was almost invisible. Then she looked at Dumbledore. Her voice was soft, but it cut. "You're still doing it," she said. Dumbledore's expression didn't change, but something in his posture stiffened. "I am preventing catastrophe," he replied. The woman's mouth twisted. "You're managing your guilt." Harry's breath hitched. He stared between them, heart pounding. They knew each other. Not like strangers, like people who had fought the same battle too many times. Dumbledore's voice remained calm. "I did not ask you to appear." The woman's laugh was thin. "You didn't have to. You said his name in here. You opened the attention wider." Harry felt the hum surge around them, as if the corridor approved of conflict. Dumbledore's eyes flicked to Harry, then back to the woman. "You should return," Dumbledore said, and the words sounded almost like pleading disguised as command. The woman's green eyes flashed. "And you should stop pretending this is containment," she snapped. "It's consumption with rules." Harry swallowed, voice shaking. "What are you?" Both of them looked at him. The woman's expression softened a fraction, as if remembering he was 16 and exhausted. and had followed a name like a lost child. Dumbledore's eyes were heavy. The woman answered first. "I'm what happens when a man asks a mirror to undo death," she said quietly, and the mirror answers with an almost. Harry's chest tightened. Dumbledore's gaze dropped for the first time. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than Harry had ever heard it. "I did not mean for her to be made," he said. The woman's smile was bitter. "That's the funniest part. You never mean for the consequences." Harry's hands shook. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. He wanted to grab the woman's shoulders and demand she tell him everything, and then demand she vanish, because looking at her hurt. "Did you make her from my mother?" Harry whispered, staring at the woman's eyes. Dumbledore's voice was immediate, firm. "No," he said. "Lily Potter was never used as an ingredient." The woman's gaze flickered, and for a moment Harry saw something like pain cross her face. "But she became the shape," the woman said softly, answering the question Dumbledore had sidestepped. "Because you were the story that mattered. Because the castle learned that her name was a key to you." Harry's throat tightened. The mosaic door shuddered, and new writing appeared across it, bolder now, as if the corridor was tired of waiting. "Open." Dumbledore's eyes narrowed. The woman's face drained of color. "It's getting impatient," she murmured. Harry's heart pounded. What happens if it opens? The woman looked at him, and for the first time there was real fear in her eyes. "It doesn't just show," she said. "It steps through." Dumbledore's voice turned sharp. "Enough. Both of you, move away from the door." Harry didn't move. He couldn't. He felt pinned by the truth of it. A door made of mirrors, breathing and writing, wanting him. The woman stepped closer to Harry, not touching, but near enough that he could feel her presence like warmth. "You have to choose," she whispered. Harry's breath caught. "Choose what?" The woman's eyes flicked to the map, tucked into his waistband. "To stop feeding it," she said. "To stop making your grief a lantern it can follow." Harry's voice cracked. "How?" The woman stared at him, jaw tight, and Harry understood before she said it. "You have to give up the map," she whispered. Harry's stomach dropped. The map was safety. The map was knowledge. The map was proof. The map was also the reason he was here. Dumbledore's voice cut in, low and urgent. "Harry," he said, "give it to me." Harry looked at Dumbledore, then at the woman. He hated them both in that moment, for different reasons, because both of them were asking him to let go of the only thing that had told him the impossible was moving through Hogwarts. The mosaic door shuddered again. The word open smeared, then reformed as something else. "Lily." Harry's heart lurched. The woman flinched visibly, as if the name hurt her. "It's doing it again," she whispered. "Bait." Dumbledore's eyes hardened. His wand was in his hand now, raised, though he hadn't drawn it dramatically. He simply had it, the way a man has a tool he's used too many times. "Harry," Dumbledore said, voice firm. Now, Harry's hands shook. He pulled the map out, staring at it. The parchment felt warm, alive, like it knew it was about to be taken. He could still see the dots, his own, trembling. Dumbledore, steady. Lily Potter, steady the corridor, pressing close, like ink spreading. Harry's throat burned. He held the map up, and his fingers wouldn't let go. The woman's voice was soft, almost gentle. "If you keep it," she said, "it will always be able to find you. It will always be able to write your name. It will always be able to offer you her face." Harry's eyes stung. Dumbledore's voice was quieter now, but there was iron under it. "You can hate me later," he said. You can demand every truth, but you must live long enough to do so. Harry swallowed hard. He looked at the map one last time, at the words in the corner that still made his chest ache. Mischief managed. As if this was all a joke. As if the Marauders had never imagined what their cleverness could unlock. Then he thrust the map toward Dumbledore. Dumbledore took it, fingers closing around parchment like he was holding something fragile and poisonous at once. The moment Dumbledore's hand touched it, the hum shifted. The air tightened. The mosaic door began to brighten, mirror squares gleaming. The corridor was angry. Dumbledore's wand rose fully now. The woman stepped backward, as if making space for something she knew would hurt. Dumbledore spoke, clear and precise, words that tasted like old magic. Mischief. Harry's breath caught. Not the phrase. Not that. Dumbledore stopped, jaw clenched, as if realizing the irony. He adjusted, voice turning colder. By the authority of the Founderstones, he said, and the wards laid upon this school, I close what was never meant to open. The mosaic door shuddered violently. The mirror squares fogged, cleared, fogged again, and then from behind the door a voice came. Not Lily's, not the woman's, not Dumbledore's. A layered voice, like many reflections trying to speak at once. Give him back, it whispered. Harry's stomach dropped. Give who back? The woman's eyes widened, and she looked at Dumbledore with sudden horror. Dumbledore's face went very still. Harry realized with a cold twist that the corridor wasn't only hungry for Harry, it had a claim on Dumbledore, too. The layered voice came again, pressing through the mirrors like breath. You promised. Dumbledore's hand tightened on the map. His voice was low, strained. I promised nothing, he said. The woman's voice was a hiss. You did. You did, even if you didn't mean it. Harry's heart pounded. What did he promise? The mosaic door began to crack. Not the stone, but the mirrored squares, tiny fractures spidering across them like ice breaking. The layered voice grew louder. Look, it said. Look and choose. Look and undo. Harry felt the pull again, stronger than before, like gravity toward a cliff edge. The woman grabbed Harry's wrist, hard. Don't, she whispered fiercely. Dumbledore lifted the map slightly, as if it was now part of the spell he was casting, and Harry saw the ink begin to shift on the parchment. Names blurred, dots smeared. It was as if the map was being erased from the inside. Harry's breath hitched. What are you doing? Dumbledore didn't look at him. His eyes were locked on the door. I am taking away its lantern, Dumbledore said tightly. The map's ink writhed. The castle lines faded. The name Lily Potter trembled, flickered, and for a heartbeat Harry saw a different name beneath it, half revealed, like a truth fighting through a label. E. Harry's breath caught. Just a letter. Then it vanished as the ink collapsed. The mosaic door screamed, not a sound, not exactly, more like a vibration that made Harry's ears ache and his vision blur. The corridor was angry, and the anger was physical. The torches dimmed. The air chilled. The ledge beneath Harry's feet felt suddenly slick, as if condensation had formed in an instant. The woman pulled Harry away from the edge, dragging him toward the stairs. Move, she snapped. Dumbledore's voice rang out, sharp now, commanding the castle itself. Seal. The mosaic door's mirrored squares went black, one by one, like eyes closing. The layered voice faltered, distorted, furious. The door went fully dark. Silence slammed down. Harry's ears rang. He stood panting, wrist aching from the woman's grip, staring at the door that now looked like ordinary stone. Dumbledore lowered his wand slowly. The map in his hand was blank. Just parchment. No castle, no names, no dots, no mischief. Harry's stomach turned with loss and anger. You destroyed it, he whispered. Dumbledore's voice was rough, almost hoarse. I saved you, he said. Harry stared at the blank parchment in Dumbledore's hand, grief twisting into rage. The woman released Harry's wrist. She looked at the door, then at Dumbledore, then at Harry. Her face was pale, her eyes bright. It's not over, she said quietly. Harry's throat tightened. What do you mean? The woman swallowed, and for the first time she looked almost resigned. It remembers you now, she said, with or without the map. Dumbledore's gaze snapped to her, sharp. Enough, he said. The woman's eyes flashed. You can't shush a wound, Headmaster. You can only stop bleeding for a while. Harry's hands shook. Tell me what you are. Tell me your name. The woman hesitated. Then, very softly, she said, It's the one thing it can't take from me if I say it out loud. Dumbledore's jaw clenched. Harry stepped closer, heart pounding. Please, he whispered, and the word tasted different now. Not begging a wall, begging a person. The woman's gaze held his, and she spoke barely above a breath. Elia, she said. The name rang strange and real in the cold air. Not Lily, not Potter, just Elia. For a heartbeat, the hum in the stone twitched, like something listening that hated being denied. Then, from somewhere far beneath the castle, a faint vibration answered, like a door that had been slammed shut and a hand on the other side that hadn't stopped knocking. They stood on the landing for a long moment, all three of them breathing like they'd just outrun something with teeth. The corridor was quiet now, but it wasn't peaceful quiet. It was the quiet of a lake after a stone has been thrown. Surface smooth again, but the ripples still moving underneath. Harry could feel it in the stone through his socks. A faint tension, like the castle was holding its breath. Dumbledore held the blank parchment in both hands. It looked wrong that way, emptied, like a body without a soul. Harry couldn't stop staring at it, as if the lines might crawl back if he stared hard enough. You didn't have to, Harry said, voice hoarse. Dumbledore's eyes didn't leave the mosaic door. I did. Harry's chest tightened with anger that had nowhere safe to go. You destroyed something my dad's friends made. The only thing that ever... He stopped, because the sentence was about to become too honest. The only thing that ever made him feel safe at night. The only thing that ever made the castle make sense. Dumbledore's voice was quiet. I know what I took from you. Harry swallowed hard. The blank parchment made his stomach ache like hunger. Elia leaned her shoulder against the wall, as if the stone was the only thing keeping her upright. She looked drained, not just tired but thinned out, like candle wax after the flame has burned too long. Her green eyes kept flicking toward the door, wary, as if she expected it to breathe again. Harry looked at her and felt the same contradictory twist as before. Relief that she wasn't his mother, and grief that she wasn't, and something else he didn't have a name for, recognition. Without belonging. Elia, he said, testing the name again. It felt real in his mouth, in a way Lily never could in this place. Elia's gaze snapped to him. Harry hesitated, then forced the words out before fear could steal them. Thank you, he said. For a moment she didn't respond. Her expression was guarded, as if gratitude was another kind of trap. Then, very quietly, she said, Don't. Harry frowned. Don't what? Elia's mouth tightened. Don't put me in your pocket as something good, she said. Don't decide I'm safe. Don't decide I'm yours. Harry flinched, because the warning hit too close to what his mind had been doing. He'd been trying to file her into categories. Friend, threat, lie, miracle, because humans needed categories to survive unknown things. I'm not, he started, Elia cut him off with a tired shake of her head. You are. It's what people do. You want a story that ends neatly. This doesn't. Harry's throat burned. You could come out. We could. No, Elia said flatly, and the word was like a door closing. I can't. Harry's hands curled into fists. Because of the corridor. Elia's eyes flicked to Dumbledore. Because of what he did, and because of what the corridor is, she said. I'm tied to it. If I go too far, it follows. If it follows, it finds more mirrors, more longing, more children who think wanting is harmless. Harry's stomach twisted. Dumbledore finally looked away from the mosaic door and met Harry's eyes. This is why, he said simply. Harry's anger surged again. So you just keep her here, like a secret you lock in a cupboard. Elia gave a short, humorless laugh. A cupboard, she repeated, and her eyes flashed. Is that what you call a place that eats people from the inside? Harry's mouth opened, then closed. Dumbledore's voice turned careful. Elia. Elia's gaze snapped to him, sharp. Don't use my name like it's a leash. For a second, the air tightened again, the hum faintly rising, as if the castle listened harder when they fought. Harry felt his pulse in his teeth. Dumbledore's jaw clenched. He didn't argue. He simply said, quieter, you are not a prisoner. Elias stared at him like he'd said something obscene. Then what am I? She demanded, voice low and shaking. Your penance. Your lock on a door you're too afraid to admit you opened. Dumbledore's eyes didn't waver. You are a consequence, he said. And I am responsible for keeping you from becoming catastrophe. Elia's expression twisted, and for a moment, Harry saw something raw beneath her guardedness. Pain, yes, but also fury at being reduced to a concept. Harry took a step forward before he could stop himself. Stop, he said, voice cracking. Both of you. Just stop. They looked at him. Harry forced breath into his lungs, forced his mind to hold on to something solid. I want the truth, he said, staring at Dumbledore. All of it. Not the careful version, not the when you're older version. Now. Dumbledore's eyes held his, and for the first time Harry saw something like surrender there. Not because Dumbledore wanted to surrender, but because the night had dragged the truth into the light, and it wouldn't go back quietly. You will have it, Dumbledore said, but not here. Harry's laugh was sharp. Why? Because the walls are listening. Dumbledore's gaze flicked briefly to the mosaic door. Yes, he said. Elia's voice was a murmur. Always. Harry's stomach churned. He hated that. He hated the idea that the castle had a throat beneath it, and that throat heard his name and wrote it like a lure. He looked at Elia again, at the way she stood with her shoulder to stone, like she belonged to the castle's wounds. What happens to you now? He asked. Elia's gaze tightened. I go back, she said. Harry's chest clenched. And you just stay there. Elia's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. That's what I do, she said. I keep it from getting bored. Harry stared at her, horrified. You can't. I can, she said, and the exhaustion in her voice made the word heavier than any argument. I have, for longer than you've been alive, in some ways. Time doesn't work properly down there. Harry's skin prickled. How long? Elia's eyes flicked away. Long enough. Dumbledore's voice cut in. Quieter. Too long. Harry's anger flared again. Then fix it. Dumbledore's gaze turned sharp. Do you think I have not tried? Elia's laugh was bitter. He's tried to put a lid on it. That's not the same as healing. Harry's hands shook. He looked from the blank map in Dumbledore's hands to the mosaic door that had tried to show him his mother alive, and he understood something that made his stomach drop. This wasn't a single night's danger. This was a wound in the school, in his home, in the place he'd trusted more than any adult. Harry swallowed hard. "If it remembers me," he said slowly, "then it'll try again." Dumbledore's voice was steady. "Yes." Harry's throat tightened. "When?" Dumbledore's eyes were tired. "When you are weakest." Harry hated how much that made sense. Elia's gaze softened just slightly, and it made her look younger for a heartbeat, almost human in a way that hurt. "It will wait," she said. "It's patient, hunger, always is." Harry pressed his free hand against his chest, as if he could hold his wanting in place, like a wound held shut. He thought of the mirror showing Lily's hand on his shoulder, thought of the warmth that had flooded him so fast he'd nearly fallen to his death. He whispered, "I almost looked." Elia's eyes held his. "You did look," she said gently. "You just didn't bite all the way." Harry flinched. "I hate that I wanted it." Elia's voice was quiet. "Wanting isn't sin," she said. "It's just leverage." Dumbledore's grip tightened on the blank parchment. "And there are things in this world that live by leverage," he said. Harry stared at the mosaic door. The mirrored squares were dark now, ordinary, silent. But Harry could still feel something behind them, like a presence pressing its ear to stone. He whispered, more to himself than to either of them, "I don't want it to have me." Dumbledore's voice was soft. "Then you must learn to live with the shape of what you lost, without trying to fill it." Harry's jaw clenched, tears stinging his eyes with fury at the unfairness of that sentence. Elia's voice came, quieter still. "And you must stop chasing names," she added, "even when they sound like home." Harry looked at her. She looked back, and in that moment Harry felt something settle inside him. Not comfort, not peace, but a vow that didn't need words, because it was stitched out of the worst kind of knowledge. The knowledge of what almost happens when you let grief steer. "I won't tell anyone about you," Harry said suddenly. Dumbledore's head snapped slightly, eyes sharpening. "Harry—" Elia stared at Harry, suspicion flaring. Harry lifted his chin. His voice shook, but he forced it steady. "I won't make you a rumor," he said to Elia. "I won't make you a story people poke at. I won't drag you into the light just to feel like I did something." Elia's gaze held his, green and sharp. "Why?" she asked. And it sounded like a test. Harry swallowed. "Because you're not a tool," he said, "and because it'll feed on it." Elia's eyes flicked to Dumbledore, then back to Harry. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then she nodded once, small. "Good," she said. Dumbledore's jaw was tight, as if he wanted to argue and couldn't. Finally he said, "There are protections I can place around you, Harry. There are spells." "Spells didn't stop me from wanting," Harry cut in, voice raw. Dumbledore's eyes softened with something that looked like defeat. "No," he admitted. "They did not." The silence after that was heavy. Then, slowly, Elia pushed away from the wall. The movement looked like it cost her. "I need to go," she said. Harry's chest tightened. "Wait." Elia paused. "What?" Harry's fingers curled, then unclenched. He didn't know what he wanted to say. He didn't know how to say goodbye to someone who wasn't really supposed to exist, who wore echoes of his mother's eyes and yet was fiercely her own person. So he said the only true thing he could. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Elia's mouth twitched. Almost a smile, almost not. "Don't be," she said. "Be careful." She turned toward the mosaic door. Dumbledore stepped forward, wand raised, not threatening, but precise. He murmured a spell under his breath, and the mirrored squares began to shimmer, not with invitation this time, but with a controlled opening, a narrow seam forming like an eyelid parting just enough to let someone through. Cold air breathed out again, sharp and metallic. Elia didn't hesitate. She slipped into the seam like a shadow, choosing its place. Just before the door closed, she glanced back at Harry. Her eyes were very green. "Harry," she said softly. "Yes." His voice cracked. "Don't come looking," she said. Then she was gone. The seam sealed, and the hum beneath the castle sank, faint and patient, like a beast turning in its sleep. Harry stood frozen, staring at the door. Dumbledore folded the blank parchment carefully, as if honoring a dead thing, and slid it into his sleeve. "You will return to your dormitory," Dumbledore said quietly. Harry didn't answer at first. He couldn't. His throat felt too tight. Finally, he managed, "You owe me the truth." Dumbledore's gaze held his. "Yes," he said, "I do." Harry turned away from the mosaic door, forcing his feet to move toward the staircase that would lead him back into the ordinary castle with its ordinary secrets. He didn't feel ordinary. He didn't feel safe. But he felt something else now, something hard and clear beneath the ache. He had seen the hunger. He had felt the hook. And he had barely let go. That night, as Harry climbed toward the light and the warmth of the sleeping tower, he realized the most frightening part wasn't that the corridor existed. It was that it knew exactly what to offer him, and he would have to spend the rest of his life learning how not to answer. The end.